I don't think anyone really doubts the outcome of Penn State, Ohio State. That's kind of been a main talking point for the Nittany Lions this week. If everybody doubts us, nobody thinks we can win this game. But how all of this plays out is absolutely still up in the air. There's still a lot of interest and intrigue, I think, in Penn State versus Ohio State. The matchups, the situations, the storylines that all matter going into this game. It has been a good game over the years. I still think there's a chance that this is a good game. And so we're going to talk about the 5 things in this game that matter that I think are going to affect and determine how this plays out. And there's actually, because both teams are coming off a bye and a lot of different factors we'll get to today, there's still a lot of mystery about how this will play out. So, games in Columbus at noon. We know those facts. Outside of that, I think there's still some things we'll learn. So, here are the 5 things I'm watching for. I'm Thomas Frank Carr from Blue White Illustrated. Let's get into the 5 things from Penn State, Ohio State you need to know.
Number 5.
I didn't want to include the Ohio State wide receivers on this list, just because it's like the grass is an important part of the football game, right? Like, there has to be oxygen outside for these players to be able to play football. Ohio State's receivers are that ubiquitous to this game. It is so obvious and apparent, but it is also that important. That has been a cheat code. It has been a reason why Penn State hasn't been able to get over the top against the Buckeyes over the last decade. And so, how they're being used, I think, is the interesting thing. Despite the fact that they are, as Terry Smith called them, the 2 best receivers in college football, they are not being fed the ball at the rate you would expect. Well, I broke this down on Monday, all the way back a year ago on Monday, talking about the Ohio State offense and how they like to operate. This is a team that does not throw the ball as much as you think. They are perfectly 50-50 when it comes to run and pass. We'll get to more of that in a second. But the thing here that matters is that on third down, they have a cheat code, which is throw it up to the receivers. And I don't mean that they're just throwing it up willy-nilly. Julian Sayin's a good quarterback. He's capable of making very tight window throws. But if we took it like their overall numbers for targets, 64 for Jeremiah Smith is fine. Like, that's 4th in the Big Ten. It's not nothing. I'm not trying to say like they're never throwing to these guys. But Cardinal Tate is tied for 23rd in targets in the Big Ten. And Brandon Inniss really isn't a part of the offense in a meaningful way. Is he this week? I don't know. But like, statistically, they have not been using 3 receivers and the 3rd receiver nearly as much. But on third down, this is where they go to that well. Smith is 3rd in conversions and first downs on third down. And Carnell Tate is tied for 4th. So when they need it, they will go to those guys. And it's one of those situations where even if you think they're covered, they're still going to make a play. Carnell Tate has a 90% completion percentage on contested catches this year, and he's gotten 4 of those. He's gotten 4 of 5 on third down. So, getting off the field for Penn State, which has been a problem during their 0-4 run, and really during the entire season in 2025, it's not going to get easier this week. It's a harder task. So, that's the first thing, is that if you don't see him on first down, you don't see him on second down, just know on third down, they're coming. Okay, so let's get to number 4.
Number 4.
By the way, this is just the Cliff Notes version of 5 things to watch for. There's 1,600 words. There's 1,600 words of me breaking all this down because there's so many potential variables in this game. So subscribe right now to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for $1 to get access to premium content over on the site, and we can discuss in full detail on the message boards some of the things that I think that are here, including some of the stuff I just don't want to say out in public. Like, I just think that there are certain things that, we've learned this week that I don't want to necessarily broadcast to the world, out of respect for letting the game play out, like letting these 2 teams play without like tipping any hands, right? So, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Also, if you're watching the video and I haven't driven you away so far, like the video, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. If you like the video, super helpful. There's the hype function, which still is like, we're figuring out what that means. But if you hype the video, like the video, it's super helpful. Okay. Terry Smith said, and I'm just going to read it for you here, the most important thing we have to do is be able to run the football. We have to outrush Ohio State to have a chance. That's a twofold situation, of course. Like, Penn State has been inconsistent at running the football, and they need to make sure, and he said it just plainly later in the week, we keep those receivers off the field. They need to possess the ball, they need to shorten the game, and they need to be able to capitalize on those drives. Here's the problem. Ohio State has pivoted, and this is the most NFL part of their defense, is they've pivoted to a true hybrid front. They run everything, overs, unders, bare front. They run that at a high rate, almost 20% of their snaps. They run true odd fronts, and they can stem between any of those, which means shift between one and the other pre-snap. That is a massive advantage, and they don't make a lot of mistakes in those systems. So Penn State's inconsistent offensive line, you can generate and you can tailor matchups that way on the defensive line to put guys at disadvantages and to attack different schemes. Penn State has had inconsistencies, as I've said for like the third time here, in all of their run fronts, all of their run systems. So Ohio State's averaging 3.7 yards per carry given up this year. Penn State has been struggling to run the ball. That is not a mix for being successful, but Penn State did have some more success in the last few weeks. Simplifying, tailored, run more inside zone. Some of these things are working. And Terry Smith has talked about running and passing, and I think getting 3 receivers involved. Again, we're going to get to more of that a little bit later, or you can go check it out at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. The part here that on the other side that I find problematic for Terry Smith's game plan is like it might be 2:45 and this game is over, because that's how Ohio State is playing this year. If you look at the way they've run, they are truly 50-50 in called run plays and called pass plays. They've run 12, 13, and 14 personnel, 4 tight ends, 48% of the time. They've run 3 receivers 49% of the time. So they are this is what I've been trying to say. It's like, this is an Andy Kotelnicki style offense. The way they've been running, some of the things they've been doing, it's all very similar to what you saw. And this is what Penn State has wanted to do with their team over the last 2 years with Drew Aller under center. Build an offense that, last year you had those option capabilities, but really this year, this is what Penn State wanted to be. Run the ball, traditional run sets, quarterback under center, and then use your receivers in an efficient passing attack to move the ball and score touchdowns with a senior-laden team. Ohio State's doing it because they have the talent, like the actual receiver talent to do that, and the offensive line talent. If this is a limited possession game, it's entirely in Ohio State's favor because of what we talked about earlier. They can convert third downs. They don't settle for many field goals. They get touchdowns. Now, it will be a game of attrition, and it may seem like it's closer at halftime. It's a possibility that it's 17-0 at halftime, and that might not necessarily be indicative of how the game is going if Penn State has, 14 plays in the first half. These are the realities that could happen in this game. Ohio State has been playing that game-shortening style of play. And so if that happens, Penn State has to be absolutely perfect. They have to score touchdowns, not field goals. This is low margin for error football. And they already don't have the margin for error. So, yeah, they cannot make mistakes, is what Terry Smith said earlier this week. That's why you're going to get 8 possessions in this game. Once again, Penn State might get 3 in the first half. If you go 3 and out in the second quarter, you might not get the ball again.
Number 3.
Okay, so number 3 here is that Penn State has been spending the last 2 weeks re-engineering its passing game. And I wrote a good chunk on this. I wrote about it yesterday. Terry Smith kind of outlined the game plan and outlined what they've been doing over the last couple weeks during practice, which is trying to re-engineer the passing game, trying to get really good passing concepts, I think is how he phrased it. Just good passing concepts. I got to find it here. Just great pass concepts. Like, hey, run better passing plays so that the quarterback can pitch and catch with the receivers. Living life on hard mode. That is what the Penn State the offense has been doing this year. And I'm going to dip into something that I wrote about earlier in the week, which is the Penn State passing attack to generate explosive plays. 45-ish% of the time, they're going through what Terry Smith called a tough way to live, meaning play action passes, trick plays, deep crossers, things that take either a lot of time or a lot of trickeration to make happen. Instead of we're running pass concepts that challenge the defensive structure. This is something I've tried to point out during the season, and something that there are different buckets of the passing game that you can go to. Not all pass plays are the same. And so what Andy Kotelnicki's offense does is it starts with the run game and the option. And then the option generates easy passing concepts off of quick game, play action, and RPO, right? And play action, by the way, shouldn't be in this bucket of like on hard mode. It is the staple of the deception plays. It is a quality thing to use. And that's been Penn State's most successful way of generating explosive plays. And yet what you can also do is run a concept that puts a player in conflict on the defensive side of the field. And then that player has to make a choice of the guy in front of him, the guy behind him, or maybe two players on either side. And that generates an explosive play. The quarterback can read the situation and throw the ball to the receiver. You run it right, the decision should be obvious. And if it doesn't work the first time, eventually, if you keep being successful with the shorter completion, the deeper one will open up. It's natural instinct to take away the thing that's been hurting you, to stop the thing that's been hurting you. And Penn State, that has been their struggle of being able to generate those passing concepts within the offense. Andy Kotelnicki's system is simple because he's creating threats in a multitude of ways, but the offensive line and the run game are not generating those consistent threats, which we covered earlier. So it makes everything else harder. And what they've been doing for the last 2 weeks is, from what I'm assuming and what I've been hearing and what Terry Smith said, is putting just great passing concepts into the passing game. So doubling down and turning the offense into a traditional offense with traditional passing concepts, doing a less Andy Kotelnicki style passing attack, adding more into that section of the playbook and drawing more on those things. Now, the thing is, going back to, they've got to be perfect at it. They can't make mistakes. They've got to be able to protect it. And here's the other thing. You don't have to throw 20 yards down the field to throw an explosive play. Something that 10 yards that you then get a catch and run on, or something at 14 yards that you get extra yards afterwards, those are explosive plays. You don't have to always go deep down the field to back the defense off. And so that's the goal of this game. When you're facing a team that likes to blitz, they like to, even if they're not always throwing extra numbers, they like to simulate pressure, they like to zone blitz, and they will play man coverage, obviously. That's their cheat code on the defensive side, which is if you have receivers and you can just throw the ball, and if you have got corners and linebackers and safeties that can clamp down in man coverage, you got kind of a cheat card. You can just go to that well and eliminate some of the problems that you're having. But in those situations where they try to throw a zone blitz at Ethan Grunkemeyer and you can protect it, there are opportunities to take chunks out of this defense. Has anyone done that? No. But we are painting you the picture of how this happens. Not it will happen. This is how it can happen, because they can't just run the ball. They have to be able to throw the ball. They have to be able to generate some chunk plays, because you can't expect your young quarterback to operate a 13-play drive to take half a quarter and score a touchdown. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be hard throws, and you can't put all that on him. So give him some wide open throws to get open in the secondary. There's a possibility here, because I don't think, as I've said before on the channel this week, that Ohio State's pass rush is as good as to have a ace in the hole there, where they're just going to get pressure. Maybe Arvell Reese is that guy. Maybe he isn't. It's not like Penn State's offensive line has been elite, although I think there's also some things going on there this week that I'm interested to see if what I glimpsed at practice is right. That might help with that. So again, stay tuned. We don't want to give away everything here. But that's what they need to do on offense from a passing concept perspective and what they've been working to re-engineer. Now let's get to number 2.
Number 2.
What if what we said earlier isn't true about Ohio State? This is something, talking to our good friend over at Letterman Row, Spencer Holbrook, pointed this out of, yes, Ohio State has been a ball control team throughout the year. And then against Wisconsin, they flipped the script and showed they can throw the ball 45 times, complete 80% of the passes in a high-volume passing attack. And so that begs the question, do you get the Ohio State that is trying to shorten the game, or do you get the Ohio State that's going up against former defense coordinator Jim Knowles and wants to put a little bit of a fine point on the inamicable divorce that happened between the two of them less than a year ago? It's entirely possible. So this is on the blending number 2 and number 1 together to find out what we're going to find out, the new stuff of what we haven't seen just yet. But to that point, Julian Sayin's a good quarterback. If you think it's just the receivers that are making him look good, that's not the case. He is an accurate quarterback. He throws the ball with really great velocity, and he's got a quick release. All the things you want in a quarterback, good decision maker, makes quick decisions, and showed last week he can extend plays and he can avoid pressure when there is pressure. So, which one of these show up? If there is a path to a blowout, it's that Ohio State chooses that, and the personality will show up fairly early. That's the part I'm interested in. Now, as a pivot, that might play into Penn State's hands and their advantage, because if there's one thing this defense, at least on paper, has been good at, is that they have been good at stopping explosive plays, and they have been good in the secondary. Now, part of it is teams that just haven't chosen to throw that much because they can run the ball, but they also haven't had success when they tried to go down the field. Nico Iamalava, the reason he was scrambling is because nobody was open. The reason that Dante Moore had to complete most of his passes out of structure is because people weren't open. So as long as Penn State is not in a situation where they've simplified and dumbed down their defense too much, this defense has the flexibility to be able to contend with explosive passing attacks. Now, one-on-one, that's a different story. If you're in one-on-one situations, you're playing cover 3 and cover 1 a lot because you're stopping the run with extra bodies. Now we're in a very dark territory for what Penn State can happen. And Terry Smith has said, don't let these guys behind you. So it's a reality. It's a thing that they're worried about. It's a thing they're thinking about, because they're going to have to do that at some point. They're going to have to play man coverage, and they're going to have to play some of those coverages that are going to get them in a situation where that might happen. And if Ohio State presses the gas, there's only so much this defense can be on the field. Again, going back to it, the whole thing is like Penn State's got to be able to, they have to be able to run the ball to be in this game, because you can't keep putting the defense out there. It's not, eventually the dam is going to break. We've seen that all year long. Even when they were at full strength, eventually the dam is going to break. Which brings us to number 1.
Number 1.
Ohio State has the advantage. Both teams are coming off a bye, but Ohio State has the advantage of choosing what they want to work on in the bye week, and Penn State having to work on stuff during the bye week. And let's talk about the elephant in the room that wears number 14, and that's backup quarterback Jackson Smolik. We were at practice. We've talked about his situation on the BWI live show. Penn State was trying their best to obscure his status going into this game, hoping Ohio State would take time to play, focus on the 2 quarterback option system, which they can still do. They can still run that, but the question is it Smolik that's going to be the guy out there? I don't know that it makes a difference, because he never threw the ball, and he had no options to throw the ball during the game against Iowa. But have they added those into the passing game? Have they added those into those packages? That would have been what they were doing during the bye week. What they were doing instead is putting all the quarterbacks in practice jerseys to make it look like everyone's wearing a blue jersey and not just 14. He also, during practice this week, was wearing long sleeves inside, and he was wearing a glove on his hand, which I had not seen him wearing a glove on his hand previously. It was kind of like a Halloween costume, right? Happy Halloween, by the way. Is he available for this game? Are they going to use that? These are the bye week shenanigans. These are the, again, I think it's very obvious where I'm pointing you with these things, but I also don't want to come out and say, like, blow the subterfuge out of the water, but I think you get the idea. And then on the other side, what is Ohio State cooking up? Again, go check out the video that we posted on Thursday from Spencer Holbrook and myself. We spent an hour talking about a cross-platform conversation about these 2 programs. He's from Letterman Row. He covers Ohio State. He's got more of the, hey, what's going on in the run game for Ohio State? Is there more that they could work and they could cook up this week? Because they haven't gone to a lot of concepts out of just simply running the football, running basic concepts, running things that are, traditional in a lot of senses. But they have been doing a couple of things that I'll highlight here that I saw on film. But he's got more of what the other stuff from early in the season that I'd really like you to go check that out. This year, a couple of things. Again, I keep going back to, they've got some Kotelnicki stuff in here. Brandon Inniss and Jeremiah Smith have lined up in the backfield at times this year. And what they've done is that it's not necessarily an option play in terms of a read, I don't think, or at least it's a pre-snap read, not a post-snap read, where they can either, and this is like an old school, like high school thing. You give the dive to the up back, which in this case would be a traditional running back, or if too much of the defense sucks in, you can then pitch out to the sweep player, right? Out to the pitch player. And so you'd be getting a slot receiver, Brandon Innes, or Jeremiah Smith out on the edge, one-on-one with a corner in that situation. To my knowledge, they haven't actually pitched the ball yet. They've also incorporated a lot of motion pre-snap for jet sweeps and pop passes and things like that. They haven't used those either. So there's clearly a layer to this offense that hasn't been activated yet. And again, we'll go back to the question of which Ohio State shows up and how do they feel about Jim Knowles and his defense? What are they trying to take advantage of? Amari Campbell, he loves to chase things down out in the perimeter. He loves to overreact to actions. I shouldn't say loves. He just does. Is that on the table this week, or are they saving it once again for later in the season? Penn State, on paper, does not qualify for a team you need to use any of that against. And yet, because it's Penn State, Ohio State, maybe they do. So those are your 5 things to watch for. Again, go read the whole thing over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I've given you a lot of homework. I'm sorry. But there's just a lot of good stuff this week. We got an extra hour of content for you, hour of conversation with Spencer Holbrook that we posted on Thursday. I really encourage you to go to listen to that because you get a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, a lot of better understanding of the questions I have. You know, after watching the film and wanting to know more context, I asked him about those things about Ohio State. That's on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to that video here. You're going to be watching it popping up around my face at some point soon. You can click on that video and get more of that information. Okay, I'm Thomas Frank Carr for Blue White Illustrated. We'll be back 9 a.m. with the Penn State football tailgate show here on the YouTube channel. Talk to you then.